Once you pass 70, one change starts affecting almost everything in your life. But most people don't notice it until it begins to interfere with their energy, their balance, their recovery, their confidence, or their independence. And in this video, I want to explain exactly what that change is, why it matters so much, and why understanding it earlier can make a much bigger difference than most people realize. Because this is not just about the obvious things people expect with aging. It's not just gray hair. It's not just slower movement. It's not just needing a little more rest or noticing that your body doesn't move quite the way it used to. It goes deeper than that. It's the kind of change that sits underneath so many other struggles, but most people don't understand it until it has already started affecting how they feel, how they function, or how quickly they bounce back from everyday life. And that is exactly why so many people get caught off guard. I'm Dr. Olivia Brooke, and over the years, I've seen this pattern again and again. People often think one illness, one fall, one bad week, or one stressful event is what changed everything. But many times, that's not really the full story. The bigger issue is that the body had already changed in a way they didn't fully understand. And by the time it became obvious, it was already affecting daily life. That's what makes this so important. Because if you don't understand the shift, you can misread what your body is trying to tell you. You can think something came out of nowhere when it really didn't. You can assume you just had bad luck, when in reality, your body had been giving subtle signals for a while. And you can keep living by the same rules you followed at 50 or 60 without realizing that after 70, the rules change. So here it is. After 70, your body becomes less forgiving. That is the change most people miss. Your body can still heal. It can still adapt, it can still recover, it can still do remarkable things, but in many cases, it has less cushion than it used to. Less reserve, less backup, less room for error, less ability to absorb stress without consequences. And that one shift can affect almost everything. When you're younger, your body can cover for you in ways you don't even notice. You can sleep badly for a few nights, skip meals, go too long without enough water, push through stress, catch a bug, stay inactive for a week or two, overdo it physically. And somehow, your body usually finds its way back without too much drama. After 70, those same things can hit differently. They can hit harder. They can last longer. And they can lead to more consequences than people expect. That's where people get caught off guard. Because this usually doesn't begin with one big dramatic event. It often starts with something small. A few days of low appetite, a mild infection, a poor night of sleep that turns into several poor nights. Not drinking enough water, a medication change, too much time sitting, a busy week, a stressful event, a small stumble, a short period of being under the weather. On the surface, none of those things sounds huge. But then something shifts. Energy drops more than expected. Weakness sets in faster. Balance feels less steady. Recovery takes longer. Thinking feels foggier. Mood changes. Confidence dips. And suddenly people are left wondering how something so small turned into something so disruptive. I've heard people say it was just a cold, or it was only a small fall, or she only stayed in bed for a few days, or he was fine last week. And families often say this came out of nowhere, but a lot of the time it didn't come out of nowhere at all. There were signs. There were usually clues. Maybe they were easy to miss. Maybe they didn't seem urgent in the moment. Maybe they looked like ordinary tiredness, ordinary aging, or just a temporary off day. But when you look back, the pattern is often there. Less appetite, less movement, more fatigue, more hesitation, more time sitting, more trouble getting up from a chair, more shortness of breath doing everyday things, more exhaustion after simple tasks, more days where the body just seems a little off. That's how this often works. It's not always one major moment. It's often a series of smaller things that the body just doesn't handle the same way anymore. And this is why the phrase less forgiving matters so much. Because after 70, the body may still be capable, but it often responds differently to stress. It may take less to throw things off. And it may take more time, more rest, more support, and more awareness to get things back on track. One of the biggest places this shows up is recovery. After 70, many people notice that bouncing back takes longer than it used to. A cold lingers, a sore muscle hangs around, a minor injury takes weeks instead of days, A busy stretch leaves you drained for longer. Even a poor night of sleep can affect the next day more than it once did. And this can be deeply frustrating because mentally, many people still expect their body to recover on the same timeline it always did. They think, why am I still tired? Or why is this taking so long? Or this never used to affect me like this. But the truth is, healing still happens. Recovery still happens. It just often needs more respect than it used to. That matters. Because when people don't understand this, they often push too hard, too soon. They try to return to normal before their body is ready. They assume that if they just force themselves through it, things will improve faster. But very often, that backfires. Instead of shortening recovery, it stretches it out. Instead of helping the body, it puts more demand on a system that is already working with less margin. And this is one of the most important mindset shifts after 70. Recovery is not weakness. Recovery is part of staying strong. Ignoring what your body needs does not make you tougher. Sometimes it just makes the setback bigger. Another major place this shows up is strength, and more specifically, muscle loss. After 70, muscle tends to decline more quickly, especially if activity drops even a little. And this matters for much more than just lifting power or exercise. Muscle supports stability. It supports mobility. It helps you get out of a chair. It helps you walk confidently. It helps you catch yourself when you trip. It helps you stay independent. It protects you in ways most people don't think about until they start losing it. This is one of the reasons a short period of inactivity can matter so much later in life. When you're younger, you can be sick for a week, sit around more than usual, and eventually slide back into normal life without much trouble. After 70, even a short stretch of inactivity can take more out of you than you expect. And if strength drops, balance often drops with it. That's when everyday life starts to feel different. You notice stairs more. You notice getting up from low chairs more. You notice uneven ground more. You notice carrying groceries more. You notice fatigue more. And perhaps most importantly, you start noticing risk more. That is where confidence can begin to change. And confidence matters far more than many people realize. Because sometimes the physical issue is not the whole story. Sometimes what changes a person's life is not just what happened to their body, it's what happened to their trust in their body. This is especially true after a fall. And I want to be careful here because not every fall leads to a major injury. But even when someone recovers physically, the emotional impact can be enormous. A person who once moved freely may suddenly become more cautious. They may stop walking as much. They may stop going out as often. They may avoid stairs, avoid errands, avoid social activities, avoid doing things alone. And they may not even realize how much that change in behavior is affecting them. Because once movement decreases, strength decreases faster. And once strength decreases, balance often gets worse. And once balance gets worse, fear increases. And once fear increases, movement drops even more. That is how things begin to snowball. Not because a person gave up, but because the body became less forgiving, the confidence took a hit, and one small event quietly changed the rhythm of daily life. That's why after 70, protecting movement matters so much. Not because everyone needs to become highly active, not because everyone needs an intense workout plan, but because regular movement helps preserve the very things that support independence: strength, stability, endurance, coordination, confidence, recovery, mood. Even appetite and sleep can be affected by how much a person moves. That brings me to another hidden area people often overlook: appetite. After 70, changes in appetite can matter more than people think. Some people simply don't feel as hungry. Some eat less without meaning to. Some lose interest in meals when they're tired, stressed, grieving, sick, or less active. Some begin skipping protein without realizing how much that matters. And the reason this becomes such an important issue is because the body still needs fuel, even if hunger signals become less reliable. If you're eating less, you may have less energy. If you're taking in less protein, you may lose muscle faster. If you're eating poorly while also recovering from illness, stress, or inactivity, the body has even less support to work with. So it seems like "I'm just not that hungry lately" can quietly contribute to weakness, fatigue, slower recovery, and less resilience overall. Again, this is what I mean when I say the body becomes less forgiving. Things that may have seemed small before can have a bigger impact now. Is another one. Not drinking enough water can affect anyone at any age. But after 70, even mild dehydration can show up in bigger ways. It can contribute to dizziness, weakness, headaches, confusion, low energy, constipation, and a general feeling that something is just not right. And sometimes people don't even realize dehydration is part of the problem because they don't necessarily feel obviously thirsty. That's another important point. After 70, the body does not always send strong, dramatic warning signs. Sometimes the signals are quieter, more subtle, more easily mistaken for just getting older. That is why awareness matters so much. The earlier you notice changes, the easier it often is to respond before the problem grows. Sleep also becomes more important. Now, sleep has always mattered, of course, but later in life, the body may feel the effects of disrupted sleep more quickly. A few bad nights can affect mood, patience, concentration, energy, coordination, and even appetite. And if poor sleep goes on for too long, it can make everything else harder. Recovery feels harder, exercise feels harder, emotion feels harder, coping feels harder. That's because the body does so much repair and regulation during rest. So if sleep becomes more disrupted, the whole system can feel less steady. And again, this is where people get confused. They think they suddenly became fragile. They think they can't handle life the way they used to. They think something is terribly wrong. But sometimes the truth is simpler than that. The body is not necessarily failing. It is just operating with less cushion. And that means the basics matter more than ever. Food matters more. Hydration matters more. Sleep matters more. Movement matters more. Routine matters more. Recovery matters more. Medication awareness matters more. And paying attention early matters more. Illness is another place where this change becomes very clear. Something that might have been an inconvenience at 50 can feel overwhelming after 70. A mild virus can knock energy down hard. A small infection can cause much more weakness than expected. Even a brief illness can lead to a loss of strength if it keeps someone in bed for too long. And because the body may have less reserve, complications can happen faster if warning signs are ignored. This is why I always say that after 70, early attention is not overreacting. It's smart. It's not about panic. It's about respect. It's about understanding that when the body has less tolerance for disruption, small symptoms may deserve a little more attention than they once did. That doesn't mean you need to fear every ache, every tired day, or every small change. Not at all. It means you want to know your baseline. You want to notice when something is different. You want to recognize what is mildly annoying but expected versus what is new, persistent, worsening, or just doesn't feel right. That distinction is incredibly important. Because after 70, ignoring early warning signs can be much more costly than simply checking in sooner. Medication is another huge piece of this. A lot of people are surprised by how differently the body can respond to medications later in life. A medicine that once felt fine may suddenly seem too strong. A dose that used to be no big deal may now lead to grogginess, dizziness, weakness, confusion, or loss of appetite. And sometimes people don't connect the dots because they think, I've been taking this for years, so this can't be the issue. But the body changes. And how it processes medication changes too. That means your history with a medication does not always guarantee that it will affect you the same way forever. This is especially important because medication-related changes can show up in subtle ways. More fatigue, a little unsteadiness, a little brain fog, a little nausea, a little more sleeping during the day, a little less appetite. These things may not look dramatic at first, but over time they can affect function in very real ways. That is why sudden changes should never be brushed off just because a medication is familiar. Stress is another factor people often underestimate. And I don't just mean emotional stress, although that matters too. I mean physical stress. Sleep disruption, travel, illness, poor appetite, too much activity, not enough activity. Recovery from even a minor setback. These things can stack up. And once they stack up, the body may begin to show it. This is where a lot of people feel blindsided. They say, I don't understand why I feel so drained. Or, I don't know why this hit me so hard. Or, I didn't think something this small could throw me off for this long. But again, that is the shift. After 70, the body often has less tolerance for disruption. The margin gets smaller. And when the margin gets smaller, the cost of small stressors can get bigger. Now, I want to talk about something people don't always say out loud, the emotional side of this. Because when your body becomes less forgiving, it can affect how safe you feel in your own life. You may become more hesitant, more frustrated, more worried about getting sick, more cautious about going out, more aware of your limits, more bothered by the fact that recovery takes longer than it used to. And those feelings are real. They matter. Because emotional confidence is part of physical independence. If you stop trusting your body, you may start withdrawing from the very activities that help keep you strong. You may move less, socialize less, try less, venture out less. And over time, that can create a much bigger impact than the original problem itself. So when I say this one change affects everything, I really mean it. It affects the body. It affects the mind. It affects routine. It affects confidence. It affects recovery. It affects independence. It affects whether a person keeps doing the things that make life feel like life. That is why awareness is powerful. Because once you understand what is happening, you stop personalizing every setback. You stop thinking, what's wrong with me, every time recovery takes longer. You stop assuming your body has betrayed you simply because it needs more support than it used to. Instead, you begin to see the pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can respond more wisely. You can respect recovery instead of resisting it. You can take appetite changes seriously. You can protect your strength before it slips too far. You can stay on top of hydration. You can notice when medications start affecting you differently. You can respond earlier when something feels off. You can keep routines steadier. You can protect movement. You can make small changes sooner before they become necessary changes later. That is a huge shift. And I want to emphasize something important here. This is not a message of fear. It is not a message of doom. And it is absolutely not a message of helplessness. In fact, I believe the opposite is true. Understanding this can be deeply empowering. Because once you know that the body becomes less forgiving, you stop expecting it to perform under old rules. And once you stop using old expectations, you can start making better decisions in the present. That is how people stay stronger longer. Not by pretending nothing has changed. Not by denying what the body is telling them. Not by waiting until small problems become big ones. But by recognizing that after 70, wisdom matters just as much as willpower. Maybe more. The people who tend to do best are often not the ones who never face illness, fatigue, falls, grief, stress, or setbacks. Life still happens, bodies still change, challenges still come. But the people who often maintain the most independence are the ones who adapt sooner. They pay attention earlier. They respond to patterns before those patterns turn into spirals. They understand that strength is not just about powering through. Sometimes strength is about pausing early enough to protect what matters. It's about knowing when to rest, when to eat, when to hydrate, when to move, when to ask for help, when to follow up, when to slow down, and when not to ignore what the body is trying to say. That kind of awareness can change everything. Because so often, what steals independence later in life is not one huge catastrophic moment. It's the accumulation of small missed signals, small neglected changes, small losses in strength, small disruptions in routine, small dips in confidence, small periods of inactivity, small delays in paying attention. Those small things add up. But the good news is this. Small supportive choices add up too. Regular meals add up. Protein adds up. Hydration adds up. Walking adds up. Strength work adds up. Good follow-up adds up. Rest adds up. Consistency adds up. Protecting confidence adds up. Taking little changes seriously adds up. And over time, those choices help preserve the very reserve that becomes so precious later on. I also think it helps to let go of one idea that causes a lot of unnecessary frustration, and that is the idea that if something is normal for age, it should simply be ignored. That is not what normal means. Normal does not mean meaningless. Normal does not mean harmless. Normal does not mean you stop paying attention. It simply means something may be common, but even common changes deserve awareness. because the goal is not to panic over every difference. The goal is to understand what your body is doing well enough that you can tell when something falls outside your usual pattern. That's the sweet spot. Not fear, not denial, awareness. Because awareness gives you options, and options help protect independence. So if you've been feeling frustrated lately because your body doesn't bounce back the way it used to, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not imagining it. You are not lazy. You are not weak, and you are not necessarily doing something wrong. There may simply be less margin than there used to be. And once you understand that, your job is not to fight reality. Your job is to work with it wisely. That means giving recovery the respect it deserves. That means not ignoring reduced appetite. That means noticing when movement has quietly decreased. That means taking changes in balance seriously. That means paying attention when medications feel different. That means recognizing that after 70, one rough week can have a bigger impact than people expect. And that also means recognizing that one supportive week can help more than people expect too. Because everything cuts both ways. If disruption matters more, then support matters more too. If setbacks hit harder, then good routines help more. If the body is less forgiving, then being more intentional becomes even more powerful. And that is a hopeful message, because it means there is still so much you can do. You may not control every diagnosis. You may not control every surprise. You may not control every change that comes with age. But you can absolutely improve your odds by understanding the pattern earlier. You can protect what is still strong. You can respond faster when something starts slipping. You can make it easier for your body to recover. You can support balance, confidence, strength, and stability in ways that truly matter. And that matters because independence is rarely lost all at once. Usually, it changes gradually. A little less walking, a little more sitting, a little more hesitation, a little more fatigue, a little more reliance on others, a little less confidence doing ordinary things alone. That gradual shift is exactly why awareness matters. Because if you catch the drift early, you can often do far more about it. But if you only look for dramatic problems, you may miss the quiet ones that were shaping everything underneath. So if there's one thing I want you to remember from this video, it's this. After 70, your body is not necessarily failing you, but it often becomes less forgiving. It has less tolerance for disruption, less room for neglect, less cushion when routines fall apart, less backup when illness, stress, inactivity, poor nutrition, dehydration, or medication issues begin to pile up. And once you understand that, so many things start to make sense. Why recovery takes longer. Why routine matters more. Why strength slips faster. Why confidence can change after a fall. Why dehydration hits harder. Why illness feels more intense. Why medications may feel different. Why small problems deserve earlier attention. And why paying attention to your body becomes one of the smartest things you can do. Because understanding this does not make you afraid. It makes you prepared. It helps you respond sooner. It helps you recover smarter. It helps you make better decisions. And it helps you protect your health and independence in a much more powerful way. I'm Dr. Olivia Brooke, and if this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. What's one change you noticed as you got older that caught you off guard? Or what's something you wish someone had told you sooner about life after 70? Share it in the comments, because chances are someone else needs to hear it too. And if this helped you understand what your body may be going through, stay with me, because these are the conversations that can make aging feel less confusing, less frightening, and a whole lot more manageable. See you next time.